Hello, I'm Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, and so feel free to hit those buttons as much as you'd like. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share this video as much as you would like, or any of my other videos. The purpose of this channel is educational and thus nonprofit, so you're welcome to do that as well. And this channel primarily focuses on deconversion issues related to mostly Christianity, but other faiths are also suffer some of the same psychological and sociological effects, so yeah, them as well. And atheism, and I also talk about Bible and theology in relationship to deconversion and atheism. Today is another installment, if you will, of Rabyd Ramblings, and I want to talk about a deconversion issue. I guess the best way to say this is I don't want to be bitter. One of the great challenges that I faced after I lost my faith was this kind of hollow bitterness, I guess would be the best way to put it. What happens is you suddenly realize you've wasted an incredible amount of time, given an incredible amount of money to something that's a fairy tale, that's no better than any other mythology, Greek, Norse, all the rest of them. And you suddenly realize that you may have even wasted some of the best years of your life following after something that was a fairy tale. Now, there are a lot of things in that life that I don't regret. I have 3 wonderful children that have led me to soon to be 6 wonderful grandchildren. I've gotten to see some of the world. I've rubbed shoulders. I've done some very interesting things. In the name of religion, I took a trip to Romania, and I fell in love with Budapest, Hungary. Oh my gosh, what a great city. Still longing to get back there. And I also spent some time in Oradea, and then we went into Transylvania a little bit. Probably one of the greatest experiences of my life was sitting in the van driving into Transylvania, through Transylvania basically, while reading Bram Stoker's Dracula. I thought that was very fitting and very apropos. So I managed to finish that book in a couple of hours. Well, more about 4 hours, because I read about half of it where we were going and half of it on the way back. But it was just one of those great experiences, and I was on a mission trip. So I don't regret that kind of thing. What I'm talking about here is the fact that I spent a lot of time pursuing a career that in the end didn't pay me anything. I have very few friends left from that career. There's a few of them that I still possess. But also, a lot of money, a lot of time, regrets of opportunities lost. And so I've been meditating on this issue pretty much for the last couple of weeks. And, today I was just kind of lying in bed. The switch to third shift is I'm still struggling with it. I didn't sleep very well today during the day, but hopefully that'll get fixed before too long, or I'm going to just have to switch back for my health's sake, if nothing else. But I'm sitting there lying there, and I suddenly a thought just crossed my head. I don't want to be bitter. I just don't want to be bitter about this. Being bitter, you can be angry about things. I mean, there's still, a few people that I wouldn't trust anymore. And there's one person in particular that I could still consider an enemy. And there's a part of me that says, if justice ever comes around, I'll have no problem dealing justice. It won't be vengeance. I'm not trying to do something worse to them than they did to me. More of trying to balance the scale, if nothing else. But when you consider, it's funny how many people were friends of mine as long as I was a pastor and a minister and a Christian. A ton of them disappeared. I had good cause to be bitter because in the space of 2 months, I remember my Facebook friend list went from like 386 to 197. And most of the ones that were left were either heathens or people that have been friends for a long time, classmates from high school. A lot of the ones, though, from Bible college and seminary, they're not there anymore. A few are, but a lot of them are gone. Money, holy shit. 10% of your income over a 40-year period. I wanted you to think about that. I've tithed all my Christian life. And I'm thinking to myself, that would have all made some really good retirement for myself. In fact, I'm really thinking that 10% is a good way to go for retirement, except I'm not really sure that would be enough yet. So that's kind of where I am with a lot of that stuff. When you start to look at all the things that you lost by being a person of faith, and you realize you can't get it back. And there's great temptation from a deconversion standpoint to be very bitter about that and be angry about it. I know there's a lot of angry atheists. I'm not as angry as I was. And maybe that's a good positive outcome, I think. I think a lot of you out there that have deconverted, I know you struggle with this. I know you struggle with the anger and the bitterness and the disappointment and the fact how many conditional friendships you had as long as you were a person of faith. And at the moment you're not a person of faith anymore, all of a sudden you're not worthy of anybody's time. I'm not saying that all my Christian friends did that. That's certainly not true. But a good chunk of them did. It's amazing how many people respect you because you're the pastor. And then when you're not the pastor anymore, they don't have any respect for you at all. I had my problems, and my exit from my church wasn't without mistakes made by myself. But, I still deal with the fact that I loved a group of people as people, regardless of faith, for 9.5 years. And as soon as I had a problem, yeah, you're fired, go away. Never invited me to talk in my own defense, never gave me really an opportunity. Just you're gone. And let me tell you, that's something I've struggled with for over 2 years now. I'm sure if you talk to the people in that church, they will tell you a different story. They have a different perspective of it. That's fine. Their perspective doesn't include any conversations with me that I'm aware of, other than 2 people that came to me and talked to me. And one of them is no longer part of the church because she couldn't handle the hypocrisy. And, everybody was happy to get grace and love from everybody else, including the minister, as long as he was there. But the moment the minister needed grace and love, well, yeah, fuck you. And that's kind of how I felt. And, I had a good friend that I thought was a good friend, and he turned his back on me. So that's where I started to realize the notion that some people really aren't friends. They're posers. They're undercover haters. And as soon as you're no longer of use to them, they'll toss you aside. And you learn the type of person that is. If somebody's always dealing with you on the tit for tat, back and forth, you'll scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, basis for the friendship, probably not really a friend. I have a good friend, and we don't keep score. We just don't. I don't know if I'm ahead or he's ahead, and I don't give a shit. If he needs me, I'm there. If I need him, he's here. It's like that's just the way it is. And it's kind of one of those once-in-a-lifetime friends that just is never going to go away. We'll be toasting each other with beer when we're both 80. So that's kind of the way it is. So I have a lot of good things still left. And people ask me if somebody were to ask me, how do I get past the bitterness of it all? Well, number one, you need to make a commitment not to be bitter. The people that are in your life are either going to make that very easy or they're going to make it very difficult. I've heard stories. One of the most sad stories I've heard over the years is when people lose their faith and their whole family just ostracizes them. I know, for instance, the Amish and the Mennonites shun people. So I've always found that interesting. Yeah, we're going to show you the love of Jesus by not having anything to do with you. Yes, that's what Jesus would have done, according to the stories, considering he went out of his way to tell stories about going, love your enemies and do good to those that hate you. I imagine you're probably supposed to do even better for people who have lost their way, quote unquote, lost their way. I'm not sure I've lost my way. I think I've just found the truth, small t, about a lot of things. That the mythology that I followed is no better or no worse than any of the other mythologies in the world. They're made up stories by people, and just because they're old doesn't make them true. So, you lose a lot of that, and you lose a lot of friendships. I struggle right now. I'm fairly certain, for instance, that I can't live where I'm at in my old hometown. I just don't feel like it's home anymore. I've tried to have that conversation with several people, but I just don't feel like this town is home anymore. I don't feel like the situation is home anymore. When I was a minister, I had a position and I understood my position here in this town, but I grew up here. I just don't feel the same way about it. And I'm trying not to be bitter about that. I don't want to be bitter. It's about facing reality without getting angry. And I know that's hard. When you first become an atheist, I know I spent my first year as a pastor and an atheist, still pastoring my church. Oh my God, you want to talk about having to bite your tongue because of the anger issues. Holy crap. I'd get into the pulpit and I'd preach and it'd be like, oh my God, this is so much bullshit. And, but I'd preach it because, I couldn't avoid it. I mean, whenever I get to the Christmas story, for 3 years, I would do the Christmas thing, read the Christmas story. And in my head, I'm going through all the problems with the Christmas story because, as I pointed out in my series, The Tall Tale of Jesus, very early on, Luke has one account of the Christmas story. Matthew has another account of the story. Mark doesn't have any account of the Christmas story, and neither does John. We literally have only one witness of all the events of the Christmas story. And that's what's so sad about it. And yet people think it's wonderful. What a wonderful, great story. I don't know. I kind of like the Odin stories better, where you make oaths to your family and you profess your loyalty and you do all the things to celebrate that the darkness is coming to an end and the light is beginning to reshine in the world. And that's a great theme. It's a great theme. And I'm sorry, to me, it's better. And I get to the Easter story, same problem. I haven't got there in the Tall Tale of Jesus, but the biggest issue is this. All 4 resurrection accounts are different. They all have different details and some of which cannot be reconciled. If you're going by the 2 or 3 witness thing, I hate to say it, but the resurrection story has as many holes, if not more, than the birth of Jesus. That's why I think when you really look at the birth of Jesus, it's kind of like, and the death of Jesus, these are things that look like they were added on to the front and back of the story. I'm just saying. And that the story was really Jesus' teachings at first, and then somebody added, I think Mark is the one who added the initial narrative based on the oral traditions. And then the later Gospels just embellished, added on, or changed it, or completely went off the rails like John and does stuff that the other Gospels don't even talk about. So his is completely one witness. So when you realize all that, and you have to go through that as a pastor, for 3 years, I'm standing in the pulpit doing Easter messages, trying to give people hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. It didn't happen. Okay, it just didn't happen. There's no historical evidence for this, and the only evidence we have is hearsay from a bunch of people we don't even know. And, I go through Christmas, same thing. And the infuriating thing about Christmas, more so than Easter, is now that I know a lot more about my pagan, Viking, Germanic, English heritage, how much of the symbolism has just straight up been stolen by the Christians, from the pagans. It's just amazing to me that, and the Easter is just as bad, by the way, but it's not as obvious. But when you see the mistletoe and the trees and the vows and the giving of gifts and all this other shit. And you're like, yeah, that's straight up theft. Okay. And you want to be bitter about that too, because you realize Christianity hasn't been a nice religion. I think the real story of how Christianity took over Europe was more about political alliances and swords than it was about the quote-unquote Prince of Peace. The message, being so true that people, no, the church had deep pockets and a lot of money that they got from fleecing the flock. And they would offer rulers, hey, you convert to Christianity, we got your back with some cash, and you can build that army, and you can go take on your pagan enemies. We both win. So the guy converts, gets money, builds an army, goes crushes his pagan neighbors, makes them Christian. That's how Christianity really spread across Europe. And I've known it for a long time. When I studied the history books, I'd read the Christian history books that I get at Bible college at Trinity. And we had this church history book, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, there's something wrong here. And I remember going to secular history sources and saying, wait a minute, according to this guy didn't just persuade people by the brilliance of his preaching. He was standing there with an army of 10,000 men. That's a pretty persuasive stick, accept Christianity or die. Sounds familiar. I always love how Christians get after people that are Islamic, but it's like, I wonder who they learned it from. I don't know. Christianity is 600 years older, so, yes, maybe. You want to be bitter about that, because when you really look at what side you're on in history, when you're a Christian, you're on the wrong side a lot. Ethically, morally, a whole bunch of things, and you want to get bitter about that. But at the end, I don't want to be bitter. This is a deconversion issue because it deals with a psychological attitude. I only get this one life. And I think this offers to me a better philosophy, a better morality of life, because I now can look at life and say, I don't want to squander my opportunities that I have in life by being bitter about the things that I've lost or been taken away. I need to be focused on what atheism gains me, which is a clear perspective, a realization that spirituality just doesn't really exist the way that all the religions say it does. I think there is an atheist spirituality. We often talk about consciousness and philosophy, and there is some metaphysical concepts to atheism and some forms of atheism. I mean, I've seen all kinds. I've met pagan atheists that are more pagan than me. Believing in spirits and things like that. They just don't believe in an overarching god or gods or goddesses or any of that crap. They, believe in some sort of spiritual realm. Still makes them atheist. And so you can be bitter about what you've lost, or you can start embracing what you gain. The ability to find your own purpose, go after your own purpose, enjoy the things of life without somebody telling you you're being sinful and being an asshole. And if I'm not harming anybody, it's probably not really all that sinful. It's just people like to define it that way because then they can pat themselves on the back about how righteous they are and how they're better than everybody else. Well, I'm not saying I'm better than everybody else. Well, yeah, you are. You're saying you're following Jesus and you're following his teachings and morality that makes you better than somebody that's not. That's patting yourself on the back for thinking you're better than somebody else. It's really sad because if Jesus existed at all, I think he was just a rabbi from Nazareth. And I think if he were alive and could see what the disciples did to his teachings and his actual story, he'd be appalled. I think he would be appalled. Well, I just wanted to ramble on for a little bit on the deconversion issue of bitterness. It is something that all of us that have deconverted face from time to time. We get angry, we get bitter, we get upset. And, we just need to realize that we're looking backwards instead of looking forward when we get bitter. And it takes a little bit of training, but you can learn how to look forward. It sometimes may be difficult because the people around you are still looking backward and they want you to be what you were. I have that problem with my family a lot. I think a lot of them just want me to go back to being what I was. they don't like the way I am now, and they're scared and they're worried, and Dad and Grandpa, whatever, going to hell. There is no hell. I'm not going anywhere. When I die, I simply cease to exist. And that's a scary thought. People don't like that thought, but it's the truest thought I can have about it. And so it makes me live the life I have with as much gusto and love for it as I can muster. And bitterness is going to rob me of that. And so I'm really, really working on trying to get over it. Well, I hope this little video, this little ramble has helped you if you're out there struggling with bitterness. I still struggle with it. I'm not saying I've arrived on the mountaintop, but I do know I don't want to be bitter. And hopefully someday I can convince you not to be bitter and also be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.